let's ride. Peace to the seas, the cream of the crop. I'm here to give you truth so you rise to the top. Our enemies try to fill your mind up with lies, but I'm here to protect you, make sure you survive. Open up your first eye, don't fall for the traps. Say no to drugs and be proud to be black. Black is the essence, the elders gave the lessons. You the future warriors, here to resurrect this. Here's a gift that I'm willing to share. It's quite rare, and it took a little time to prepare. Every letter and every word is truly sincere. African youth, you're the best, others can hardly compare. Love the melanin in your skin unconditionally. Despite the misery connected to its history, trichology. As our people treated it foolishly. Before slavery, our roots were surrounded by royalty. Every generation is supposed to get better than the latter, but we separated from our ancestors. Let's bridge the gap, become whole again, live from the soul again, learn to grow again. I remember when I was younger, I sit on my daddy's shoulder, wishing I was older. Now I'm a grown up, but I don't know much. It's time for Sankofa. It's time for Sankofa. We build our own schools for our children's needs. The enemy's schools breeds fools and fiends. By all means, we convene to put them on the path of power and high esteem. If you don't know where you come from, why you standing where you standing, where you going, can you answer? We were masters before massive. We have gathered together to get it together. From now and forever after, never sever. Our bond will never shatter ever. Boys and girls, the world is yours. You have options. See that the choice is yours. Win or lose, the elders will help you. An individual without a village is just an empty vessel. Raise the babies, frequencies, love, respect, and dignity. Decency can be cool too. School the youth, equip them with the tools to live. Left foot forward, trample over evil. Know what it means to be you. By nature, you're righteous people. Don't be afraid to be you. Fear is in the mind. Reality is you are aligned with the divine. Call upon the ancestors for guidance. Applying God energy, building manifest through high science. Coming in from the cold, embracing the sun on our own. Now we know what we know. We wanna go. Let the seeds grow, let the trees grow. Cause you never know, what fruit they may bear. What fruit they may bear. Let the seeds grow, let the trees grow. Cause you never know, what fruit they may bear. What fruit they may bear. Let the seeds grow, let the trees grow. Cause you never know, what fruit they may bear. What fruit they may bear, what fruit they may bear, what fruit they may bear. Sanko for kids. Peace. I said, Asiatico. Peace and Liberation School. We're taking initiative to raise the minds of our babies. Because these death camp so-called schools have been miseducating us for far too long. We got the God truth. Baba Baruti, silent teacher. He really teaches, by the way. I mean, as a professional. And we got the great ambassador, Moses. That's what we do, man. We live this. Word. Glorious.
Peace and welcome to the February Roundtable. Today we have a very interesting discussion, as always. We're going to be discussing why the children of conscious parents come out so crazy. And we all know we've seen it. You see people, they seem like they're very active in the community, very hardcore, and you look at their children as they grow up and you're like, what went wrong? So that is going to be our topic today. For those of you who are not familiar with our roundtables yet, this is something that we used to do when the station first started, War on the Horizon. All of the DJs would get together and pick a subject and just talk about it a little bit, of course, have callers. And it was really fun to see everybody's take on different things. Well, over a while, that kind of fizzled out. So we decided last year we're going to bring it back. So we started in January. We had myself, Lady Shabazz, we had Irritated Jeannie, and we had Sister Yaya on, and we were basically talking about how Black women can keep their men. So that was a really fun show. And now today we are going to be talking about children of conscious people again. Today we're going to have myself, we're going to have Brother DJ, and we are going to have Brother Baruti. So it's going to change every month who's going to be on the show, so you never have to hear the same people a lot of times interacting. You know, it'll be a different group of people, a different subject, and it'll be really fresh and new. It'll be a lot of fun. So that is what's on the agenda today. And I guess, you know, I'm going to bring my co-host on in just a moment, but just to give a little intro, like I said, we've all seen these children of conscious parents who go astray. And one of the most blatant examples that we could think of, I mean, I know we try to tiptoe around it. We don't really want to address it. But I think the number one person we probably think of, like the poster child for this subject, would be a brother named Farah Gray. Well, now his name is Farah Gray. His name used to be Farrakhan Muhammad. He's the son of the late, great Khalid Muhammad. And, you know, we all used to see him up on his videos. He'd be standing post while his father lectured. He was there with his father. Unfortunately, when his father was shot, you know, he was just there, and we were all rooting for this cute little boy, this sweet little boy that he was going to grow up and just stand in his father's, go in his father's footsteps. And it didn't happen. So we're going to be, I mean, what went wrong? What happens? And there's a lot of things that happen. There's a lot of things that go wrong. But for those of you who don't know, I'm surprised, but a lot of people really aren't familiar with little Farah Gray. As I said, he was Khaled's son. He was always involved in Khaled's life. And now he is a very well-known speaker. He changed his name from Farrakhan Muhammad to Farah Gray, pretty much breaking any bonds, you know, in that respect, which I don't blame him for changing the Farrakhan part, you know, that could, because of the whole Farrakhan Khalid thing, but he actually went back to a slave name, which is, yeah, it is what it is. And now his thing is, when he's interviewed, because he's a millionaire, he's very successful, he doesn't give his father any credit whatsoever. He basically tells the story about how poor he was. He grew up with no furniture, sleeping on the floor with rats and roaches, and he was trying to struggle to make a business. And then some white man, he claims is like a mentor to him, kind of helped him out into the man that he's become today. You rarely, if ever, hear him talk about Khalid being his father. You never hear him explain how he was broke while Khalid was his father, and we saw him all on rostrum posts. He says he grew up in with a single mother. So we all know that this is not true. We all know that this is completely incorrect, but this is the story he tells. So what I'm going to do is play a short clip. It's from a BET documentary on the brother. And the sound is not the best, but I'm hoping you can hear it. It's just a few minutes long. I want you to see for yourself so that you know that I'm not exaggerating, you know, and we can delve into this topic. What is wrong with these children? You'll hear him talk about how poor he was. You'll hear him talk about giving a business card that he made out of cardboard to some white man who then helped him establish this business. And you'll never hear a mention of him being wealthy or being able to blossom into the person he's become because he had a strong, dynamic father like Khalid Muhammad. So let's listen to that.
Before the break, we met John Bryant, who grew up on the rough streets of Compton, California, and turned challenge into triumph, becoming a millionaire by making real estate deals. But what if this is the only real estate you know? These are the Robert Taylor homes, a place most kids can only imagine getting out of by rapping, blending, or dying. Not Farah Gray. Farah Gray was a millionaire by the time he was 14. What clicked in your head as a child that says, I want to create something that I can make money with?
Being broke. The poverty to do it to you. When I say poor, most people think, okay, well, you at least had furniture, you at least had a car. No, we slept on the floor with the rats and with the roaches.
But Farah didn't need much to get started. Using his red lunchbox as a briefcase and his brother's clip-on tie, Farah started his own business. It was a 6-year-old version of real estate. Farah went into business selling rocks. No, literally, rocks. He took rocks he found in the projects, painted them, and sold them door to door to his neighbors.
And I would knock on people's doors. Hello, my name is Farah Gray. Nice to meet you. Would you like to buy this? And people were looking at me like, isn't that the rock that was in front of my door? I'm like, yeah, but it's different now. It can be used as paperweights, and it can also be door stoppers. So I made $50.
How do you create a vision to sell that, either in or outside of a community where other people are broke too?
I was well introduced very early to rejection. When I went out with those rocks, some people didn't think that was cool. They had no need for it. People slammed the door on me, cussed me out, all kind of stuff. But I just made a few dollars on that door. And then I said, well, let me go to this one. I made some money there, but the person in between cussed me out. So, you kind of get a chance to see very early that not everybody's going to tell you no.
I don't know if anybody's told no more than this generation. Mm-hmm. No, you're not going to be successful. No, you can't have no books in your school. No, you can't have any computers. No, you're not going to make it outside of your community. Mm-hmm. So what was it for you that allowed you to see beyond the first 25 no's to a potential yes?
What I learned very early was you expect people to say no. It's easy to say no. So to me, I was like, no, okay, click, no, click. But I continued to persevere because I learned that we should never fear rejection and everything we want is on the other side of fear. I say you challenge fear. You push yourself. Every time you get nervous or fear something, you get a little bit closer to it. You do it. And then you look back like, wow, it wasn't that bad.
Surrounded by despair while growing up here, Farah had a couple of things in his favor. He had a quick mind, he had the determination of someone who spent his life hungry, and even by the first grade, no matter what happened around him, Farah believed he had a future, and he announced that future to the world.
I cut some business cards out of cardboard, and I called myself the 21st century CEO is what I wrote on my card. So I gave this one guy my business card. I told him, so my name is Farah Gray. Nice to meet you.
I didn't even think about it as being cardboard. It was his card. This was his presentation.
He said, well, here's my card. He said, my name is Roy Tower. And I have a think tank called Ideators, and we come up with business solutions and strategies for the government and for corporations. So what is it that you do, young man? I was like, I don't know. I just got that business card. I'll do all that. So he was like, okay. So he said, I can see you want to go into business, real business. I said, yes. He said, you have friends that want to go into business. I said, yes.
So I said to him, I said, why don't you get your friends together and start a business club?
So I created a club called Unique, which is the Urban Neighborhood Economic Enterprise Club.
We were the type of kids that did not waste time and did not waste energy on nonsense.
All right, we're going to stop it right there. I think that's about enough. So the man that you heard at the end was the cracker that supposedly helped him launch him into business. No mention of Brother Khaled at all. He was sleeping on the floor with rats and roaches, and Khaled allowed that to happen. I guess to hear him say, or Khaled didn't even exist, so I guess he didn't allow it to happen. So this is the state of conscious children. This is an extreme case, but we all know that it happens more often than we like to admit. So I'm going to go on and bring Brother DJ on. We're still waiting for Baba Baruti to come on as well. Brother DJ, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Greetings, and I appreciate you having me tonight.
Greetings. I appreciate you being here, definitely. What do you think about these the children of conscious parents and how they're going astray and just becoming a huge disappointment?
Well, that particular clip that you played is extremely interesting. I was not personally familiar with all of the dynamics that have affected that brother. I was aware of some of the things, but it just goes to show you what can happen if we are not really a community, And there's this old saying that says, "Children of farmers don't become farmers." And oftentimes that is because children are right there with the struggles, the trials, the tribulations, all of the heartache that their parents know and understand, those of us who do serious African work, sometimes it's very, very lonely, and sometimes it gets discouraging. So for young children who are growing up in that environment, it doesn't always make for, clarity, because of course we got to remember we always have this Urugu system, materialism, individualism pressing on our heads, and the children are oftentimes split between two worlds, and if the community, the African community, is not whole, healthy, and in a place that it should be, these children oftentimes can grow up wanting to have the material things, wanting to be identified, as individuals, not really ready to embrace or willing to embrace their African identity, not really able to walk, not necessarily in their parents' footsteps, but in the steps of the ancestors. So it obviously can create a whole host of problems for children who grow up with conscious parents. And then, of course, we got to, define what it is that we mean by being conscious, because that is oftentimes a relative term, and it's not really specific, oftentimes in our life and in our worldview. So I'm definitely curious to hear Baba Baruti's take, his analysis, his observations, and yours as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And hopefully Baba Baruti will be with us shortly. He said he would be here, so we will patiently await his arrival. I know we're both looking forward to that. I just was brainstorming and wrote down a list of things that I think can affect it. And I'm really glad that you said community, because that's one thing that I completely left off. So thank you for that. So I guess I can just read this list and then we can go down and we can add on to it, because I know you have a lot of other things as well, and see if we can come up with anything else, and then maybe we can start solving the problem. Because to me, it's kind of ridiculous. We put our heart and our soul into the struggle, and we want it to be carried on because it's not going to be finished in our generation, but it almost seems like we're just kind of not wasting our time, but we're not making the best use of our time if it has to stop with us, if it doesn't carry on, because we're not really making sure that our children are where they need to be. Some of the things that I said is that a lot of us are hypocrites. We go outside and we say one thing, but in the home we do another. So our children never really get a firm foundation and never really believe in what we say, because they see the hypocrisy. They see you saying one thing and you're doing another, so they model what you do instead of what you say. I said that, yeah. Some of us have a tendency to neglect our children, and because the children feel neglected, a lot of times they'll rebel to get back at you, or they never even learned your beliefs anyway because you were so busy in the community teaching them, you forgot about your child at home. So they never learned your beliefs, and they're a little angry with you, so they're not going to do what you want them to do. They're going to go an opposite direction. A bad choice in mates. A lot of times you can put everything into your child, do everything possible, but if their other parent, their father or mother, depending on, they can undo everything that you do. If you marry a Christian and then you try to raise your child as a nationalist, that Christian's a lot of times gonna totally turn your child off from anything that you want them to do. So that's another mistake that a lot of us make. Doing a bad job teaching in terms of just giving orders and not explaining why. There's a lot of that goes on. Just do it. I'm not going to tell you why. The white man's the devil. I'm not going to explain it. Just believe it. Nobody reacts well to that. So that could be a reason that children kind of go astray. A lot of us have our children when we're young, just like the masses of Black people. So we just don't know how to parent at that time. And so we lose a lot of time with our children. We don't do the right things that we would have done if we would have had children a little bit later, when we had a little bit more wisdom and more to share. Some of us are too soft. we're not able to make demands and set limits. We might say that we're pro-Black, but we'll never tell our children, you will not bring a white woman to this house. The only mate that you can have is a Black woman, and if you choose other than that, you're not welcome here. Most of us won't really put our foot down like that, so they test the boundaries and they end up doing what they want to do because we were too soft, and they don't feel like they're going to lose us and the family or anything valuable by going a different way. A lot of us, unfortunately, are poor, and that's not appealing. This whole poor righteous teacher mentality where we're struggling and we're living off of beans and government cheese, that's not appealing to children. They're going to want to go the opposite way. Nobody really wants to live like that if they have a choice. Another thing is peer pressure. A lot of times, no matter how African-centered we are, we send our children to public schools and they undo whatever we're trying to teach them. We might have them around family who undoes everything that we try to teach them. Or we're not choosing our children's friends correctly and their friends undo everything that we try to teach them. So those were a few things that I thought of.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate that list because you hit on a lot of important things. And I would just like to follow up with what you said concerning the hypocrisy between, with parents. If they're saying one thing in front of an audience of people and they're doing something totally opposite of that in the privacy of their own home around their children, and this whole thing of, do as I say, not as I do. Well, that may work with a child that's 4 or 5 years old, but it's definitely not going to work with a child who's 15 and 18 years old, who's grown up in a dysfunctional environment, even though the father or the mother may claim to be conscious or African-centered, And the other thing is that oftentimes when people speak to an audience of, those who are active on the lecture circuit and things like that, see, there's no accountability oftentimes when you're speaking to people that you don't know. So there's no pressure, you see. But when you're responsible for raising and rearing this young warrior in your home, there's a whole lot of responsibility that comes with that. And so oftentimes what I've found is that parents who make a living speaking in front of people oftentimes don't even speak to their own children.
True.
Don't even teach their own children to the standard that they teach everybody else, across the country. So this child grows up in a home with the parent, but is at the same time totally alienated because the parent is not really investing any quality time in the child. He or she is spending the lion's share of their time just lecturing, as to make a living, to earn an income, and eventually, like I said, it takes its toll. You can tell a child certain things when they're 3 or 4, but when they're 15 and 18 years old and you haven't put in that quality time, it's going to show.
I agree 100%. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we do incorrectly. We spend so much time in the community. We're always doing this and doing that. And we have a tendency to neglect our homes. We don't teach in our homes. We don't spend time in our homes. It's very hard to find that balance, especially if you're one of those people who are out there doing it just to be seen and wanting to be a celebrity. A lot of times that ego comes before anything. So you're out trying to get your ego stroked while your child is at home, waiting for you and wanting you and asking, where's my daddy or where's my mommy? And those are scars that kind of stay with the children. It's not hard, if you're going to be going to a speaking engagement once the child reaches a certain age, to take them along with you so they can see what you do and they can kind of get involved. I know Brother Kylie did that with Farah, so it doesn't always work. But, that's a good foundation for them to actually get involved and see what you're doing. And I think one of the reasons maybe it didn't work with Farah is because all of the drama that was going on at the time. As I said, he was even there at the time when his father got shot. So I can see how it would be very unappealing to him to follow in his footsteps. I still wouldn't kind of distance myself the way he has from his father's legacy, but I might not want to go in that direction if it means I'm going to get shot or, something like that. That could be kind of traumatic for a child.
Yes, it is. And the fact that, Dr. Khaled was so much in the forefront of the movement. It's hard for a child to be able to process that there is no one who I can equate with my father, because my father is saying things and oftentimes doing things that no one else in this movement is saying or doing. So Dr. Khaled oftentimes was in a class by himself. He didn't really have a lot of peers. He had people that he associated with, of course, in his organization, but they were not of the caliber that he was. And it shows right now today, and I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but there is only one Dr. Khaled.
Right.
And he definitely had ideological clarity as it relates to black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. He could clearly articulate the goals and objectives of both. So for a young brother growing up in that environment, those are some big shoes to even attempt to fill. And if you don't have a community that is, actively involved in also raising and rearing you, 9 times out of 10, you're going to fall short tremendously.
I agree. And it's not even always that's like the person that everybody knows of pretty much. But I've seen it happen on even a small level. I've had friends who, they were older and they were super militant, just super militant. I would actually joke around and say, that's my second mama or something like that, because they were so militant. I loved them. But their children, just could not follow in that footstep. I had somebody who wanted me to marry her son. This is when I was single. She wanted me to marry her son because her son liked white women. And she said, well, you're kind of light skinned. Maybe because you're militant, I'd love you as a daughter-in-law. Maybe you'll marry, can you talk to my son? And I'm like, I don't want to marry your son. He's a coon. It's too late to try to shape him and mold him now. That's something that had to be done as a child. I can't save your son now. He's a coon,
Right. Yeah, and that happens, because oftentimes people, want to try to shore up some things that they may not have taken the time to really teach or train their child. So they're looking for someone else to kind of, undergird or augment that shortcoming. It happens all the time. But look at what happens to the children that are produced from that union, when both people are not ideologically clear and ideologically in sync, in true complementarity. It creates a dysfunctional environment. And Amos Wilson said years ago that if we don't correct the issues within our home, they will affect up to 7 generations. And I was talking to a family member of mine a couple years ago, and she mentioned that there were some secrets in her life that she would take to her grave. And I told her, I said, now, while that saying is pretty popular, it's not true, because everything that Brother DJ has not dealt with, guess what? It will manifest itself in my children. So at the end of the day, I take absolutely nothing to my grave. All of the character flaws that I did not deal with while I was alive, they will manifest themselves in my children, and my children will tell on me. They will be the physical manifestation of everything that I did wrong oftentimes, if I have not taken the time to correct those issues and teach them, through example, what to be, how to be, and how to incorporate this African-centered process in our lives.
Why do you think it is that so many of us are so hesitant to really sit down and give our children a thorough understanding of our beliefs and our stance? Why we feel the way we do about white people, about integration, about certain leaders, why we have the lifestyle that we have. And I know a lot of people do it. It's not just the nationalists. There's a lot of even religious people who they just go through the rituals, but they never explain it to their children. And unfortunately, the nationalists a lot of times are like that too. We talk a lot, but we don't get down on a child's level and explain it to them where they can understand and really embrace it willingly.
That's an excellent question, Sister Shabazz, and one that takes a lot of study and a lot of time and a lot of self-reflection. And I think the reason why people do that or fail to do that is because they're not truly centered. They're African in name, but they're not African in terms of their thought process and their worldview. They still may want to keep one foot in the Shurugu system for security sake, you know, and a lot of us are still feeling our way. So we're not 100% sure that what we're doing is the right thing. And it is, and it's the only option. That's what I teach my children, that being African is your only option. You see, and being African encompasses everything. You know, and I use the example all the time that, you know, we hear a lot about the green movement, conservation, and things like that. Well, when you're African, that's automatic. You don't use more than what you need. So you're automatically green. You already live a life of sustainability because that comes with being African. So the practical things that we need to, you know, communicate to our children, the benefits, we're not able to do because I think oftentimes we're not totally sure.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. And we are now joined by our wonderful brother, Baba Baruti. Are you there, brother?
I am certainly here. I apologize. I thought it was 7:30 to 9, but I'm glad that I'm late in a way because what delayed me was something that occurred on Baba Baruti page, and I had posted, and this is related. It was good, of course, to hear Brother DJ's voice as I called in. I posted a thing giving the definition of Jegna and the origins of the term mentor on there, and that was yesterday, and I came back from doing errands today, and I find all of these homosexualized Africans comments, you know, you can't say this, and, you know, I'm happy, and all the rest of this mess, and I'm sitting here thinking as I'm looking over my notes, that's one of our major problems, being African-centered people, and I couldn't agree with Brother DJ Moore. I of course have a list of things that are a problem, but this one immediately pops out, consistently pops out. These folks who are claiming to be African-centered, they're, as Brother DJ said, they're compromised in their thinking, and because they're compromised in their thinking, then they are not good judges as to what their children should be exposed to. So their children becomes exposed to individuals who are anti-African in their spirit, anti-African in their politics, anti-African in their cultural loyalties, their cultural misorientation. So there is, for those who may get upset because their child decides it wants to be homo-friendly or their child wants to be an interracialist, they really have no business getting upset because they thought that they allowed individuals who claim to be African without checking them out, to be in the presence or be in the position to influence their child's thinking. And we should understand that children are looking for power. I think that's pretty much normal across the board because that power will allow them to do whatever they want to, whenever they want to, however they want to. So children are looking for that. And that also makes them look for contradictions in their parents because that allows them to more easily negate what they say or remove the importance of their statement, even though they may still be their dependents. And you have these individuals who are compromised, who are fully compromised, who know that they're compromised, have no problem with their being compromised, and want to redefine African along compromised lines. These individuals are in these children's presence, and while the children are upset with their parents because their parents are making them do this or making them do that, which is what parents tend to do because they're looking out for the best of the child, these individuals are in their ear, being their friend, making them into their friend, having them believe that they're on their side when essentially they're building up their army. So when we talk about individuals who are claiming to be African-centered and are raising, quote unquote, raising children to be African-centered, their politics are flawed in many of the cases. And I didn't hear a lot of what was going on before, or at least in the first half an hour, and I'm sure that a lot did go on, but there are major problems there. That is the number one problem that I have found in Atlanta. People who are claiming either through word or through the way they carry themselves, or where the events that they're at, or who they associate themselves with. They're claiming to be African-centered, but you see their children, and their children are the exact opposite of that, either by choice, because they allow them that freedom, and I don't think that freedom should be allowed personally, or because they want to include everybody in this African. So anybody claiming to be African has access to their children, and that's a major issue. And again, I guess at the beginning, what struck me, and it struck me before, and it has angered me before, that these individuals, these homosexualized Africans, these interracialists, they act as if they have the right to dictate to you what your thoughts are supposed to be. So you have them playing the race card against you. So since we're the same race, any other time they don't want to be associated with being black or being African or what have you. But when it comes to their European center, they want to say, oh, well, we're both black, so I ought to be able to dictate to you that you listen to me or that you consider this a viable point. Well, now that I've vented on that, I really need to get that out, because it's like, you see this. You see it constantly. I give one example, and then I'll be quiet. We had a dance, drum and dance thing where primarily sisters came and danced, did African dance, and it was drumming. It was beautiful. I did most of my editing there for years. And the problem was that one of the sisters who was responsible for it, a number of her dancers were homosexualized, faggoty, flaming males. And they were so important to her that one of them was her second in command. Her husband, the sister who was in charge, her husband, and she had a son. And he was, he wasn't a toddler, but he was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5. And the husband didn't really know what was going on. He was doing rites of passage stuff and other stuff in the community. So I noticed that the second in charge, sort of chubby, flaming male who was with her, liked to pick up and play with their son. So I went to the father. I didn't waste my time talking to her. I went to the father and I said to him, do you know that this is going on? Do you know that your son is being watched, babysat, played with during dance? And he just walks around and they just pick him up and play with him and talk to him and whatever else that they do. And he looked at me. We knew each other. He looked at me and said, no, I didn't know it. That was the end of that. That was the end of that for the son, because the father immediately stepped in and said, oh, no, this isn't happening here. But we have some who would think that that's, something worthy, something that their child should be involved with, because this person is claiming to be African and they might get something from this child.
Wow. We definitely have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
Well, what I'm going to do, because the phone lines are lit up, I'm going to put on the Q&A.
Q&A session started.
And we'll be coming to the phone lines in about 20 minutes or so. So if you want to get in on the conversation, you can hit *6 and you'll come to Q. And that way, when we go to the phone lines, we'll be able to go right to you. Baba Baruti, I think I heard you say that you had a list of a few things that you wanted to tell us about.
Yes. Well, the first thing on there was what I came in on Brother DJ talking about, that these individuals are not really conscious themselves in many of the cases. Sometimes you do have cases of ignorance, and ignorance isn't a bad thing. It just means you don't know. That's different than stupidity. But some of these, most of these individuals, I would say, really are not conscious themselves. Or to give an example of one of the Babas in Louisiana, he was telling me, I'm trying to make this story short. He was telling me he had a study group with a bunch of brothers. He had this study group for a number of years, and they wanted to raise some money for something, and they brainstormed about the idea, and they came up with the classic, we're going to rally off a TV. And the guys in the group, they agreed with that, and one of the brothers who had been there, whatever it was, 6 or 7 years, and they had been reading Chancellor Williams' Destruction by Civilization. They had been reading all, our classics. They had been studying. This was a study group. And he said, well, we can not really buy the TV. We can just tell the people that we bought the TV. We can collect the money. We can have somebody say that they want it, and then we don't have to worry about spending the money for the TV, and that'll be more money for whoever it is that we're getting this for. And the elder was struck, not just because he said it, but because there were a couple of other brothers in the group who agreed, thought it was a good idea. And it clicked to him at that time, and I think he worded it better than I think I ever could. He said they had read and studied and internalized the words, but they hadn't internalized the spirit of the work. So we have a lot of people who are claiming to be conscious, who know the material, who've read the material, who study, who come to the lectures, but they haven't internalized the spirit. The European and their old ways are still dominant in their thinking. Second, in a lot of these families, because they were brought up in a Eurocentric reality, and they haven't gotten over that. They haven't really distinguished between what is African and what is European. That's why we see so much spoilage among the children within our community. They have this attitude like the Amish folk up in Pennsylvania. When their children come of age, they are allowed to choose whether they want to be Amish or not. So they let them go free. And these children go into town and go crazy and get high and have sex with everybody, and then they can decide whether they want to come back or not. And, of course, some of them obviously do. And, of course, that's wreaking a problem on the Amish community now because they have a major drug problem. But the problem for us is that we are acting like we're at peace. We're not acting like we're at war. When you're at war, you don't just let your child go and explore everything and anything, because some of those things they're exploring wants him. They want him badly or her badly. So we a lot of us have that mentality of you just sort of let the child choose whatever it is that they want to be and what they don't want to be. Now, Harry Clark says, no, you pick them out when they're young and you train them like our ancestors didn't take chances. They trained their children from birth. They didn't want to take chances on what their character would end up being, or whether they would be willing to die for their people, or whether they felt accountable for their people. Another point I wanted to bring up, what do I have here? Do not bring them up to be. Oh, one thing that Baba Yika said, because we don't feel that we're at war, the children aren't being brought up with a central mission in life. And their mission is to produce families that will raise warriors, who will produce children who will raise warriors, who produce more children who will raise warriors, that this is an intergenerational thing, that this is their first and foremost priority, to produce children who will see the most important thing in their lives as to find a complement and produce families and rear their children to be warriors like they are. So if you don't, I guess for that one and the previous ones, these individuals don't see themselves as being at war. And for me, if you're not seeing yourself as being at war, you're not conscious. The consciousness is not there. Let me see. Okay. Oh, also, in all of these, I guess, that unconscious thing, not keeping an eye on the children's activities. I was getting ready to do a part 2 to the sex imperative, and I began to go online to investigate things because I wasn't that net savvy, if you will, when I did the sex imperative. You know how easy it is to access porn online without a credit card. When I was writing the sex imperative, most of the stuff that I'm able to access now with just a click of a button, you had to pay for with a credit card when I was writing the sex imperative. So any child accidentally can stumble upon a site full of porn and be there for the next 2 years, and you have no idea because you're not monitoring what they're watching. You're not keeping an eye on what you're watching. So children are smart. They know you and know what you're about, and they know how to fake that if it gets to that point. So they could be faking that, and you thinking that they're trying to be African, at the same time their dream is on becoming the porn queen or porn king, because you're not keeping an eye on what you're doing. So these folks who are conscious parents, is too much leeway, and you can call me a disciplinarian, which I am, or not. But in a war situation, you don't have time for children who don't understand the importance of obeying instructions. If the enemy's outside of my house and I need the child or children inside of my house to be quiet because I don't want them to know that they're here, when I say be quiet, then they're supposed to be quiet. It's not because I'm trying to control them or beat them down. It's because I love them and I want them to live. The last point I wanted to make, and this is I think, the saddest point. I know a group of parents, almost all of them are elders now, who raised their children from birth or very shortly after they came into their consciousness, most of them from birth, raised their children to be African-centered to the core. Everything, diet, hair, homeschooling, and if not homeschooling, then when you came home from school, you got another 2 or 3 hours of African-centered homeschooling. Where they went, the kind of stuff that they watched on TV, their access to the computer, all the rest of that. And still, after all of that, I'm going to say a good 3/5 to 2/3 of the children, as soon as they were mature enough, old enough to be independent, they ran with all of their might toward whiteness. They ran with all of their might toward whiteness. So even after the parents had done all they could, you're still going to have some casualties. So there's no guarantee. And I'm saying this, and people need to take this seriously so that it doesn't slap them in the face. The people who I know, these are people who I look up to. Okay, most of these people are people who I look up to, who were centered, decades before the thought even occurred to me to be African-centered. I was, of course, pro-black, but the idea of being African-centered, they had been doing this, the bulk of their lives, or 10, 20, 30, 40 years before I even thought about it, and they still lost some of their children to this madness, to this insanity. So there's also, I guess the final thing I want to say, there's no guarantee. You just do your best, and then if something doesn't go the way that you want to, then you don't blame yourself for it. You can always say that you did your best. And there's a quote which would take me a minute to find, and I'm not going to look right now, but it's either in the Lucia or the Teachings of Ptahhotep, where the statement says you raise your child up, to be respectful and to follow in your path and to extend, your talents further in whatever area you train them in. But if your child, when they become an adult, if they turn their eye from you, if they turn their back to you, if they start acting in ways that they shouldn't act, then you turn away from them. Some people, and I understand love, but there's a point where that turning away can be important, because without that can disrupt what you're doing. Something else that I have seen, people who are African, but they can't put boundaries in terms of the space that people who are un-African in their family can go beyond, or what have you. So those individuals, with their drive to be European, they infect people who, brothers and sisters or cousins or what have you, who shouldn't be infected, and they have a mission. They have a vision. So again, there's no guarantee.
You made some really good points. I love all of them, actually, but the last one you said really struck me, being from the younger generation, not a teeny bopper, but from the younger generation, that we were taught that it was cool to be a friend with your parent, or for a parent to be a friend with a child, versus actually being a parent and having to direct which way the child went and what activities the children participated in. And I think that we still have that European kind of thinking, a lot of us, even in the conscious community, where we want to be friends with our children instead of taking our children where they need to go.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We can see a lot of our problems are tied into the European social movement to move us toward greater individualism. And that allows for greater control. If the parent's your friend, or if you're trying to be a friend of your child, then your child, with their lack of maturity and lack of knowledge, makes adult decisions. And of course, those decisions are going to lead them closer and closer to the European.
Definitely. Did you have anything that you wanted to add, Brother DJ?
No, I'm just actually sitting here listening to Baba Baruti, and I'm just, when qualified elders come on, I know it's a roundtable discussion, but when qualified elders come on, I always enjoy, sitting at their feet.
I know that's right.
I appreciate the opportunity to have Baba Baruti on, and to listen to this wisdom and to apply it in areas that are necessary. So I'm good.
Okay. I totally agree. I'm to the point where we'd be like, okay, let's just turn the show over and make this the Abibi Fahodie program for the evening.
Right. and I say wisdom is relative, and I know this is a program about, patting people on the back for their work. But Brother DJ, Sister Shabazz, both of you, you're held in honor in this home, which is, to me, a major statement, because everybody's not. And Sister Shabazz, Enia was talking about your book first thing this morning, and she still won't let me have it back. So, and Brother DJ, well, in order for me to call you to make requests of you on things that have to do with Aqaba Institute, there has got to be a high degree of respect. There's got to be a high level of trust, not only of your skills, your ability, your doing your mission, but also in terms of how you think. Because I'm not going to hand stuff over to people or to ask people who don't think like me, if you will, to assist in projects that really can hurt the school.
I definitely appreciate that. Well, we do have one. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying Madaki the Bible for that.
Thank you. We do have one caller in queue, so I guess we can go ahead to the phone lines, because I know a lot of you want to give your input as well. If you want to call in, the number is 760-569-7676. The participation code is 948656#. I would encourage you to go on and get in the queue now if you have questions versus waiting until the last minute, because the program does stop at 9 o'clock. So you don't want to wait until the last minute and then not get your question or your comment heard. We will go to the first caller, 7846. You're live on War on the Horizon.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
To everyone. I've been waiting for this program anxiously. I'll just say I'm a parent of a young adult, and I know that I've raised my child with a level of self-love and consciousness, awareness of who she is. Briefly, I will also say that unfortunately, despite the strength and appreciation for who she is as an African woman or child, I'll say youth, despite that, unfortunately, she was thrown into a situation by the system that could have done one of two things for her to strengthen her as an African woman and make her a stronger warrior, princess as a younger woman, or it could rob her of that strength. Long story short, I think it robbed her of all the strength and so many things, usurping my responsibilities, usurping all that I taught her and my parental skills and rights, and did a lot of damage, I believe, in a 3-year period. And that was over 12 years ago. And so I am now faced with a young adult who I feel is about to make some wrong moves. And so, knowing I raised her in a conscious household, but I've allowed her to, unfortunately, be educated in general population, if you will, Eurocentric society here in the United States. I'm just really struggling. I heard Baba Baruti make this comment that I'm struggling with. If they choose to go against the ways you've raised them, then you turn your back. I am struggling with that because I've stated this to her, but I'm struggling with it because I love her with all my might. Okay, I love her. Getting kind of choked up right now. Anyway, but I think one of the issues that has caused our children who've been raised in a conscious household to lose their way is partly our community's fault, in the sense that we're not really self-sufficient economically, even our academic institutions, they are not, well, I don't have to go into detail. I'll just mention Morehouse, where things are going with that, et cetera. There's a lot of problems in our community that even medical, institutions, healing centers, there's a lot of work that has to be done in our community. And so as we try to strengthen our community at the same time, and we struggle with one another, et cetera, even in the conscious community, at the same time, our children are still living their lives. They're growing, they're maturing, and they're young adults, and they're being bombarded by this Eurocentric environment that we still find ourselves living in. So I'll be quiet now. I just had to, as I said, I hope I don't sound like I was rambling, but I just wanted to. I'm looking for answers, but at the same time, I just wanted to share those thoughts. I thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for your call. Does anybody have any words of advice maybe for the sister, or any comments?
Well, I wanted to say, and I know that this doesn't express it, but I feel you, and not through my own child who has never lost her way, but I know quite a few people whose children made choices that do not reflect the African mind that they were given, if you will. I remember when I'll put this. I dropped out of school in the 7th grade. My mother was very, very education focused, and it ripped her to pieces. But her brother said something that brought her back. My father, apparently he couldn't say the correct things for her. He was too close. But one of my uncles said to her, you did everything that you could. And for some strange reason at that time, that clicked with her. And that's one of the things I would say to you. And when I say our ancestors will say, turn your back, we're talking about a community there. We're talking about where you had a community where everyone was clear, or at least the vast majority of people clear. You brought up that point. Our community is not anywhere near close to being what it needs to be. And that's one of the important things here, us working with those individuals who are trying to form those communities that will protect our children and provide safe, sacred spaces for them to be African in. You have to live. You have to live with the idea. And it's not going to cause you a whole bunch of less pain, but you have to know that you did your best given what you knew at the time. That's extremely important. There's so many warriors I know who beat up on themselves so much because of something that they did wrong way back when, or a habit that they are still trying to work on breaking that they've had for like 30 years. The question is, did you do the best that you could with the resources and the knowledge that you had at the time? And if the answer is yes, then you can live with that. You can't make your daughter or son or whoever be African any more than you can make an adult be African. You can't make anybody be African. All you can do is give them the best that you can. All you can do is give them the best that you know. After that, it's on them. They have to make the decision to walk in that direction. The other part of that for me is when you've done your job, however small or insignificant you may think that is, your job is to plant the seed. The seed is there. Everything we see or hear goes into our memory bank. Everything that we see or hear goes into our memory bank. So everything that you've ever told her, everything that you've ever taught her, everything that you've ever brought to her attention for her to study on her own is in there, and it'll be there for her when she realizes that something is horribly wrong, assuming that she does. When that happens, it'll be there. If you hadn't done what you had done, when she wakes up, there would be nothing there for her to grab onto, and she would just go back to whatever it was that she was doing wrong. So, and I know that's not like okay, now I can rest easy and don't have to ever worry about it again. But if you think about those things, then it helps you to not beat upon yourself so much. Obviously, you love her. Obviously, you've given her the best that you can as African. So it's just a matter of you understanding that you did your best and to let her find her way, because she's going to have to find her way, just like I had to find my way back from all of the stupidity. Okay?
Are you still there, sister?
Yes, I'm sorry. I heard that I was unmuted. I thought we were disconnected, so I wasn't saying anything. I thank you, Baba Baruti, for those words of encouragement. I really do. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
All right. Brother DJ, did you want to chime in? Or
No, I mean, I agree with everything Baba Baruti just said, and to allow, to keep those channels of communication open. Don't lower your standard. Definitely don't do that. But, allow for communication to take place. And just like Baba said, eventually, oftentimes, that individual will realize, they'll wake up and realize how much they've fallen short and begin the process of getting back to where it is they're supposed to be.
well said. I don't think I really have anything to add either. I can say, because I did come into consciousness very young, that, you do fall in and out sometimes for a while if you don't have that stable community. You might get discouraged. You might just, do something else for a little while. But if you have that firm foundation, it makes it very easy to come back when you realize life is not going the way that you think it should go. So I really don't have anything to add to that. But, it is something that a lot of us go through, and you never want to think that just because they're making the wrong decision today, that they're going to make the wrong decision tomorrow.
And she spoke to the solution also. When we stop and think about it, it is. The center of the solution is community. Building that community. That's the work, and that's also something that can't happen, overnight. Because no matter what you do, if everybody in the community is against you or wants you compromised. If I might add a little story again, when Adjua was getting close, our daughter was getting close to being old enough to be independent. The people in the community, who were in their 20s in the community, who we thought, because they were raised in African center homes, who we thought would be supportive of her, they were the ones who were most trying to pull her away from being a staunch African. So if the community was what it's supposed to be, then that would have never happened. And I did find that quote, if I can read it, it's in the Lucia, and it's on page 42. It's a paragraph. So can I read this?
Sure.
Okay. If you are a parent of worth and wisdom, and this is the wisdom of our ancestors, if you are parents of worth and wisdom, train your children so that they will be pleasing to God. And if they do what is right, following your example, and handle your affairs as they should, do for them all that is good, for they are begotten of your own heart and soul. Therefore, separate not your heart from them. But if they fail to follow your course, oppose your will, reject all counsel, and it says reject all counsel, and set their mouth in motion with vile words, then drive them away. For they are not your children, and were not born for you. Those who are guided do not do wrong, but those who willfully lose their way will not find a straight course. This is the wisdom of our ancestors speaking to us. Of course, we need to take things in the context of the time, but the essential meaning is there. And for me, the meaning now is that your child or relative or whoever, not that we act like they don't exist, but we cannot allow the insanities that they may be participating in or approving of or what have you. We can't allow that to interfere with what we're trying to do as righteous warriors.
All right. Well, I hope that that helped. I know I got a lot from it. I'm not even going through that situation, but I know when I have children, like Brother DJ said, it's good to listen to the wisdom of the elders and just give you a new perspective. So I think that that was probably very helpful. We'll go on back to the phone lines. Again, the call-in number 760-569-7676. Participation code 948656 #. You want to hit *6 to get into the Q&A line. 0673, you're live on War on the Horizon.
Hotep, sister, brother Kevlar.
Hotep.
Hotel.
I don't have a question. I got a solution. Survival cancels out all programming. If you thought the consequences for your action was death, you wouldn't dare go against the teachings of your mother and your father. I saw a documentary where in one country, a girl brought the wrong person home and her father took her head off. Now, I don't mean for us to go to the extreme because we are sick people and we need healing. But we don't even punish. We don't punish economically. In the case of Dr. Carter's son, I'm sure the Nation of Islam has a mechanism for punishment. Somebody might have got soft because it was Dr. Carter's son. Now, solution to the sister who just got on the phone. She can cut off her daughter's financial resources. And here's the hardest part. Turn your back. And that's hard. I don't have any children, but they're not drafted now. So if I tell my son, don't volunteer for the military, don't go over and fight this man's war in Afghanistan, if he goes, I have to turn my back on him. And so we don't even punish. We don't have to go to extreme like they do in some countries, right? Cut off a head or arm or leg, but we don't even punish economically. And that's all I have to say.
Shay. That reminds me of a documentary that I was watching, and I don't know where it was. It was somewhere on the continent, and they didn't focus on it. It was just a passing thought, but there was a picture that said something like, criminals will be prosecuted, and under that it said, and your family will turn their back on you or something like that, or will shun you. And they're like, it was almost like a joke to them. They're like, well, in America, they'd be like, so who cares? But on the continent, that's such a big deal that people would actually be more concerned about losing the respect and the love of their family than they would be about, going to jail for a little while.
And I know Baba. We've known each other for years, and we don't disagree with this. And I'm hoping that he will also agree with me on the fact that this is at the personal level, what he's talking about, the family level. Yes, absolutely. Especially when we have taught them to be righteous. The problem comes about with something that you just said at the communal level. So, and this may extend beyond the fact that your child is always going to be influenced by you. Your child is always going to see you as important. But in Western society, because we're broken up into all these teeny tiny individualized islands, as the Kotos say, you don't have to worry about the significance of other folks if you're not in their home. If you're in their home, then it's different. But if you're outside of their home or you move beyond that, then you can act like what they say is irrelevant. You can turn your back on them even when you're wrong. That's one of the problems that we have here in Atlanta with the quote-unquote conscious community, where the people who are righteous in the conscious community here don't have the ability to exercise correctives because the person or people who are doing something wrong have a larger number of people who are claiming consciousness who they can run to, and then the people who are giving out the corrective are seen as wrong. But I would agree still in terms of principle, then that is what needs to be done. There is no correctives being applied. There is no meaningful any kind of threat, anything that someone who decides that they no longer want to be African will feel affected by it. There's no enforcement. There's There's no communal anything, and in many cases, there's no family anything.
True, and I think if you're going to implement that kind of thing where you would quote unquote shun somebody or turn your back, that needs to be something that they're raised knowing, not something that you would slap on them at the last moment. I've talked to my husband about that, and we've said, when we have children, if you mess up, you mess up, but there's certain lines that you don't cross, and they need to know this from the time they're very young. If you date interracially, I'm done with you. If you become a homosexual, I'm done with you. Those are two lines that can't be crossed. Most other things we can work with, we can talk through, but there has to be certain things that if you cross these lines, it's a wrap. And if you do that, then you're consciously aware that you're basically choosing this over your family structure. So that would be my only addition to what the brother was saying. If you choose to do that, that you'd want to raise them knowing that, so that if they cross those boundaries, they're fully aware of the consequences and it's not a shot.
And it works.
Yes, sir.
It does work. That was part. What you just said is what conversations that Iniana had with Ajwa. And she knew that if she ever, for me in particular, if she ever attempted to bring a white boy into my yard, that's the end of the discussion. And for Inia, it was particularly the homosexual thing. If she even thought about moving in that direction, she knew that she wasn't coming back in this home. That was it for me. I could deal with that. I could deal with not seeing her again, because that would go completely against the grain of what she had been taught.
Yes, sir. And I feel like at that point, it's not even your choice. At that point, they made the choice because you've drawn the line, and at that point, it's you choosing. So you can't say, mommy, daddy, you're mean or anything like that. You had the information. You made the choice. The choice was yours. I just, stuck to my guns.
Absolutely.
Did you have anything to add, Brother DJ?
Yeah, I would just simply, follow up with, in terms of consequences, in the Bible mentioned that we don't punish, and I agree with him in terms of on a communal or community level that we're not able to, apply the necessary pressure in terms of consequences to people who stray. Personally in my home, we do punish. My daughter actually is on punishment now for not having her book report completed on time. But the pressure also will eventually have to be applied from the community, and Khadijah and I, we oftentimes talk about peer pressure and how peer pressure, it's not just anything that's totally exclusive to children. There's adult peer pressure as well. And there's always consequences for our actions when we fail to live up to the standards of being an African, and that's what we teach our children in this home. So I appreciate the comment that Baba made.
Definitely. All right, going back to our phone lines. 0319, you're live on War on the Horizon.
Mayat Hotep, this is Brother Bilal saying Kofa for out of Phoenix, Arizona. How's everybody doing?
Hotep.
How you doing, Warrior?
Hotep.
Great. This is a topic that I'm falling in love with as I listen to it even more. I was taking notes while I'm listening, and I would like to comment on the conscious aspect of a conscious community, which I believe all of this is speaking toward, especially when we talk about consequences and being held to a particular standard. The first question I believe that we should put on the table, and I would like all of you to add to this once I finish this statement here, conscious of what? And having the ability to answer the question why you're conscious of that what. A lot of individuals, as Baba Baruti was stating earlier, in reference to the elder who was in the study group, and the gentleman started wanting to engage in some type of nefarious practices with their own people as it relates to fundraising. When we're talking about rearing, from my knowing, and as opposed to raising, I teach my children and all those that I come in contact the three-pronged concept of boundaries, expectations, and consequences. What I have noticed in my life, running across individuals who are older and should be mature in their quote-unquote consciousness, when it gets to that portion of why do you think this way, what are the repercussions if this isn't your train of thought, if the children isn't taught how to make proper choices and how to analyze, assess, and weigh things, they arrive at their adulthood, as the elder stated, with an ability to repeat verbiage, an ability to repeat words and believe that that is their consciousness, but they have an inability to understand how or why are we doing these things. So some of my notes here while you were talking was understanding the difference between maleness and femaleness, as opposed to manhood and womanhood. What's the difference between a thug, a soldier, as opposed to a warrior or warriorship? Those differences must be made. We have a lot of 40-year-old men and women who have maybe beards and goatees or full breasts and so forth in age, but they're locked in a juvenile delinquent thought process or choice-making process or behavioral pattern. So that has to be taught the difference as a child. How does an African-centered mind think? What are some of those thoughts? So we have to teach the child what is African thought. When we're talking about friendship selection processes, how does one choose a friend? And once again, why am I choosing this particular individual as opposed to another individual? What is my mate selection processes? Majority of the people that you speak to now, we're thankful enough to be using the term complement and complementarity as opposed to Baba Baruti's works. However, in the minds of some of the older individuals who are spewing some of this so-called conscious rhetoric, the word complement doesn't come out of their mouths. This is new to them. So the way that they instinctively think or act isn't based upon the new knowledge that they may be able to regurgitate by saying the word complement. So when I look at all of these things, and the gentleman who came on and said solutions, when I look at all of these things, we're looking at a generational change. We're looking at sacrificing a couple of generations to usher in what it is that we're talking about. So these processes must be applied to the children, teaching them how to think. We try to hold children and individuals nowadays, we want to hold them accountable for behaviors that they were never really taught how to behave a particular way. We have given them logic, we may have given them understanding, and we may have quote unquote raised them, but we didn't really teach them, we really didn't teach them how to apply this knowledge that we shared with them. So when the child, if I could share a quick story about a brother I know that was a top minister in the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
He was very familiar with the type of work that I do as far as intervention with families and African-centered case management and so forth. And he wanted to meet with me one day and told me he was losing his son. His son was a freshman in high school. That was the first time he had ever been to a public school setting. He was in the FOI since he was a child. He was raised in the Nation of Islam and everything was straight. And his father noticed that within 6 months in public school, he had totally lost his son. His son started wearing his pants sagging down, started not keeping the grooming nature of the Nation of Islam man, making sure you have a fresh haircut, fresh shave, so forth. And within 6 months, he was losing his son, and he wanted to see what my position on this was. Actually, his wife wanted it more than he wanted it. And understanding how am I losing my son in such a short period of time in less than 6 months. So this comes to the peer pressure aspect of it. When the child was being born, it's sort of like I view it training in martial arts. We can hit the pads all day long with the sparring, with your trainer, and you can punch the pads. But when it comes to an actual fight, the pads mean, the pads doesn't move. The head actually moves. So are you developing your child? Are you training your child to be able to respond to the pressures that society is going to place on them? And how do you know that that training is effective? So some of those things I wanted to throw on the table, because we talk about just the knowledge, just the words, and that takes me back to what the elder was telling Baba Baruti, that he discovered in this study group, that when they were actually placed in a real-life test, they resulted to what the social ideology was, not the African-centered ideology as it relates towards fairness and how we cooperate with one another. Immediately, these individuals resulted back to what they see as okay when society placed this test on them. So I think it needs to be more hands-on training, like I do with my children, in reference to, okay, you say you know how, let's place you in some positions to where you can see what the end results are. These are the things that I'm going to teach you. These are the boundaries. These are your boundaries, what you cannot do. And we're expecting you not to exceed these bounds. However, when society places these pressures on you and you meet particular friends or girlfriends or neighbors, and you may be playing after school or whatever in other groups, and other groups start to play on your consciousness to start teeter-tottering over the boundaries that you're expected to follow and your parents are expecting you to follow, what are these consequences? I don't want to wait till my son reaches that situation to not have thoroughly trained him in how to navigate through these particular pressures. I just wanted to add that real quick and have you guys respond, and I'm sorry for throwing so much right off the top.
Thank you.
That was a mouthful. In fact, it was more than a mouthful. It covered so much of the, I don't know, I'll say the problem, but more of the solution. I'm hoping, whenever there's a lecture or a panel, whatever, for me, I'm hoping that people take away something to do with that immediately, not, way down the road, but something that needs to be done. If folks don't take anything else from this, no matter what the circumstances they live in, no matter the strength or weakness of the community that they are part of, no matter anything, they need to take away from it the understanding that it is their complete and total responsibility until that child is no longer their dependent. So that child has decided that it no longer has to follow, your rules or your guidelines, what have you, and doesn't have to live under your roof anymore and leaves. Until that happens, then you're responsible for ensuring that they are correctly directed. I mean, when they don't turn in their book report, then they need to be checked. If there's somebody who they're hanging out with that you don't like, I don't care who this individual is, that needs to be immediately checked. It's interesting, this is something that we once knew. I mean, and it wasn't that long ago. I'm about to turn, 57, 58, something like that. And when I was a child, this wasn't at least not at my home, this wasn't an issue. There was somebody who my parents realized was bad for me. You don't play with him. You don't deal with him whatsoever. I don't even want to see a conversation. When you're in school, you don't deal with this individual. That was the end of the discussion. And because I knew that my parents were looking out for our interests, I might not have completely and totally liked it or agreed with it, but I didn't question it because I knew that they were wiser than I was. And I knew that they would not say anything. They didn't spend their nights trying to think of, let me see how I can make his life miserable tomorrow. No, they saw situations that they saw threatening, and their job as parents led them to give me guidance in those areas, guidance that I would understand. When I was 4 years old, I understood no. When I was older, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you might need to sit down and really explain it to me a little bit before I would really get it. But once they made their decision on something because it was in my best interest, that was the end of the discussion. We're having parents who were brought up in that, let me be my child's friend in the spoilage era, who think that they need to negotiate with their child when their child is in danger. think that they need to explain everything to their child when there are some things that you don't have time to explain. There's some things that cannot be explained to this child at this age. Some things that the child is not going to understand until they possibly run into that situation themselves and get deep in trouble, and then memory kicks in. So we're not operating from a position of trying to control the situation, trying to control our children, because that's such a horrible word, that word control they've made us believe. So we're not trying to control our children and our children's interaction. We're trying to get out of their way, not recognizing that when we get out of their way, that's exactly what this insanity wants. That's exactly what this reality wants. They want you to get out of the way because they are dying to get in. They are dying to socialize your children. So when you stop doing it, then they step in and they start doing it. One of the children of one of these African-centered couples that I was talking about earlier, where they raise these children to be African-centered from birth. One of these elder couples, when one of their daughters went to college, I said from birth, so from before birth, she was raised in a tradition. They let her go to college, and they made the mistake of letting her go to college in the next state, and she lost it. She lost it within like 3 months. She lost who she was. She straightened her hair. She did the whole 9 yards in terms of what she had been taught. So we have to understand that these folks are waiting. They're waiting for these children. And we have to be very, very careful. We have to maintain some control.
I think one of the things that kind of popped out for me that the brother mentioned was relating it to martial arts. I can really relate to that. It's a lot different when you're punching a dummy and when you're actually on the mat sparring, And I think that if we can develop ways to let our children kind of test out their skills without setting them up for failure, not giving them too much, but giving them just enough to where they can get used to that, I think that it'll work really well, because I'm thinking of some people I know who, they're, the white man's the devil, the white man's the devil. Yet, when they lived in a black neighborhood, they wouldn't let their children really interact with other black children at all. They kept them very isolated. And then later on, they moved around white people. They still kept their children isolated, but I think the message that the children got were, not so much the white man is the devil, but when we move on up and become successful, we are around white people. So they don't have that militancy. And sometimes the parents are, say, I'm so disappointed in them. And my thing is, well, that's what you created, because you never gave them a chance to interact and learn how to handle themselves around black children who may not think the way that you think, and learn how to defend what they believe and apply and really get a respect for how much more superior your belief system was than the other people that they were around. And number two, after that, and then you took them and placed them in this foreign environment and made it seem like, that was heaven. That was your upgrade, was moving away from the black children to the white neighborhood. So I just think in that situation, had they been able to go around children, because a lot of times that's where the peer pressure comes in, and just kind of box around a little bit and learn how to handle themselves, they might be a little bit better off now, because at this point, I don't even think, they've never said it, but I don't even think that they believe that the white man is the devil at this point, because of the example that was set.
Right. Am I still on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How we say things, the white man is the devil, and we hear all of these words, but we literally don't show them how. And I'm a big proponent of what I like to call just social field trips, simple trip to the mall, and letting my son and my daughter, I always tell my son that, you're responsible for looking out for your daughter. Looking out for your sister. And I send them off, and I want to watch from afar. I want to watch how he interacts with his peers. I want to watch if he walks away from his sister when some friends that he know is nearby. When some of his friends try to talk to his sister, is he weighing, assessing, gauging the conversation, or is he want to get rid of his sister and have fun with his friends? I'm just using that as an example. We have to literally place our children. My son recently, I've been working with him to detect certain smells in the air. And to where he can be telling him that you can be standing someplace with your friends and someone smoking marijuana. My son don't have a clue what it is. I'm not going to give my political stance on do I believe marijuana is a drug or natural. That's irrelevant. Society does. So when he's out in society, he has to know how to navigate and how to shake the spot or leave or lack of different words, or leave when situations are present that could cause him to end up in a negative situation. So I want him to be able to detect in the air without someone saying, hey, this is a blunt. What does it smell like? Particular drugs that people are doing, I want him to know what it is, what it looks like. Not just that, I want him to be able to see the change in behavior from one who started smoking at 2 o'clock. How do they act at 2:15? And this individual who's been smoking for years, what is their lifestyle and their behavior like? I'm saying these things that we have to literally place our children in situations where they're going to handle themselves. They get invited to, birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese or Peter Piper's Pizza. And my children already know what the dietary restraints are and things how we eat and why we eat this way. But I still must place him in a situation to see how he's going to respond. And one of the proudest moments is I overheard my son telling a parent exactly how I taught him about why not to eat pepperoni pizza. So they ordered all the pizza, and my son says, excuse me, ma'am, we don't eat any pork. She says, oh, don't worry about it, baby. And she grabbed it, and she took the pepperoni pieces off of it. And she gave it back to my son. So I'm looking from afar. I want to see what he says. He says, ma'am, the pork is still on it. She says, boy, listen to me. You know how we fast talk them real quick. She said, boy, listen, ain't nothing on this pizza but some cheese. So go on and eat it and be quiet. My son says, ma'am, respectfully, if I was to make a pot of stew and got ready to serve you a bowl and you saw that I had a rat in the stew, and you said, what is that? I said, it's a rat. And you said you don't eat rat. And I just took the rat out and put it to the side and gave you the soup. Ma'am, would you eat it? She took the pizza and the plate away from my son, smacked her teeth, and walked away. I went and bought my son some food, and I knew that he had passed the test because he had the logical thinking that just because the rat is removed, the poison is in its entire makeup. So the thinking of how you're going to rationalize your way through the pressures of society and how they are preying on the black mind, and particularly the children. If we're not preparing them on their own to navigate through this situation, we're doing a disservice to them, which is why I used the martial arts scenario, and thank you for understanding that.
Oh, definitely. Well, we have some good callers on the line this evening. Brother DJ, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I would just recommend for those who may not be familiar with Baba Baruti's work, I certainly would recommend 2 books specifically that deals with a lot of what the brother mentioned. And the first one is Iwa, A Warrior's Character. And the second one is Message to the Warriors, his latest book. And also, I would ask Baba to explain the difference between raising children and rearing children, because that difference is very, very distinct.
Absolutely.
Very, very critical. And I appreciate Brother Bilal. Walker just made the point about the test. I think it's important that we do that. But I was trying to figure out, in smiling, I was trying to figure out whether it felt better to know that I'm doing this for my child and making them understand, or watching them really act it out. Because I've seen my daughter do similar things to that relative to people who did not want to understand. And it was like this pride wells up in you, because not only has your child acted like an adult relative to this other person who's supposed to be, an adult, but you know that they're ready. You know that they're ready. So that's an exceptionally good feeling. It's very important for these tests, these struggles that we allow our children to go to, because he could have just stepped in and said, well, ma'am, sorry, we don't do that in our family, and spoke for his son. But it's important that we allow our children to go through these struggles, and once they have successfully gone through these struggles, to reward them in some way. I'm not talking about monetarily. I'm talking about reward them in some way that's African, so that they know that they have accomplished something that their ancestors are proud of. And that's very important. Sometimes we get locked in the I don't want to spoil my child so much because I don't want to raise my child like a European, that we forget that rewards and punishments are part of our tradition also. It's very important for them to know when they're right and when they're wrong in the right way. Just real quick on the difference between rearing and raising. This is Marie Evans' discussion. And she said, when you raise a child, you supply them with all of their basic needs. And a lot of their wants in addition to that, which I normally don't mention, but a lot of their wants. So they have their food, their shelter, their clothing. You take them from point A to point B. You get them the widescreen TV if they want them. You get them the computer. You get them all the things they want. You make sure they're at their right, school, for prestige, blah, blah, blah. You buy them a house in the right neighborhood, if you will. But when you rear a child, you give them everything that they need. And I'll say some of the things that they want, because too much of that, of course, is spoilage. But you give them everything you need. But the critical point is that you give them a political education about their power and the responsibility of that power to their people. That's very, very critical. And that's something that most people who are claiming to be conscious don't do. They don't teach their children about the responsibility of their power to their children. I've seen a lot of HBCUs take from their mission statement that they're producing graduates who will be responsible to the black community. They've removed that, and that takes away and understanding. So if they do come through with an idea that we're supposed to do something for the world, then it's not community specific. Our children need to be reared to understand just how scared people are of them, just how scared Europeans are of them, just how scared Asians and Arabs are of them in terms of their innate power, their innate genius. And at the same time, they have to understand that even with all of that power that they have at their disposal, there's supposed to be one use of that power, and that is to liberate, empower, and make sovereign African people, period.
Gosh, well, brother, did you have anything else that you wanted to say before we move on to the next caller?
No, I have to put myself under a self-imposed gag order. I have tons of things to say, but I'll just enjoy the rest of the show.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling in, and be sure that you call back.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My hotel.
And Sister Shabazz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, before I forget, and I appreciate you allowing me to do this, we will be, I'll be doing a Cypher Tuesday, and we'll be talking about this situation with Lil Wayne, making reference to our ancestor Emmett Till in one of his rap songs. So we usually don't deal with topics like that or like this on the Cypher, but I've been getting several emails of brothers and sisters asking me to really address this. So we'll be talking about this Lil Wayne song where he makes reference to our ancestor Emmett Till.
Yes, sir. And I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to actually get to that at the end of the program, but I was afraid I'd forget. So I'm going to run down the line really quickly for our listeners. The program lineup for this week, I know Brother Jeannie is going to continue with his shows on religion. He's going to be talking about African-centered religions this Monday. I will be on vacation. It will be a holiday for me on Tuesday, so I'm taking a little break. We have DJ talking about the Lil Wayne controversy. And then Friday, I believe, Inaya Baruti is going to be on with her reading list. Is that correct, Baba?
Yes, it is.
All right, so there you have it. That's our weekly lineup. But yeah, I'm interested in that Lil Wayne thing. I shouldn't be surprised. And every time I say I'm not surprised, somebody does something else to surprise me. So every time I think that I've reached that limit where nothing else can surprise me, somebody surprises me. So I'm going to have to tune into that. All right. 0181, you're live on War on the Horizon.
Hey, Eric's nice.
Good, how are you?
Good, much appreciated. my first time on the show. My name is Draco, and I think the topic is about children under conscious people. Is that correct?
Children being raised by conscious parents.
Okay. Well, I think first of all, that's the problem. I think we need to define what is a conscious community, because I know me and some friends have spoken about it over the last few months, and there's no actual conscious community with visible barrier, kind of like, let's say, Chinatown, where obviously Chinese people and related Asians are there, like kind of like what Dr. Paul Anderson would say, actual ethnic town will have their own language, their own barriers, whatever, to define what it means to be whatever. So when you talk about conscious, obviously we both know what that means, intelligent black folk or African center, whatever. But, the issue with that is that most of these so-called conscious people, let me just be blunt over here. I can.
Sure.
All right. These people, most of the people who are quote-unquote conscious, they're nothing but a bunch of potheads with African medallions. And I know so because I've dealt with them over the years. And I would speak to them, think they're sincere about whatever, but they're just a bunch of talk. They might put on the red, black, and green, or red, yellow, and green, but they usually smoke. They're intellectual masturbators. Most of them don't talk about having their own business. Most of them don't talk about things of substance. So that's the first thing that we have to talk about when we're talking about the conscious parents trying to raise their children. If they really believe what they believe, they're going to try their damnedest to instill their values in the children. But if you don't believe what you're saying, you're not going to instill in your children because you don't believe your own product. You see what I mean?
Yes, sir. And Brother DJ, you were making a comment?
If you don't mind, I'd like to ask the caller a question. Are you of African descent?
Yeah.
Okay, you are?
I guess I don't sound quote unquote African, but yeah, I am. Proud.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Please continue.
Okay, yeah, that's basically what I'm saying is trying to instill those values are hard, but you need a clear set of values of what it means to be conscious, because like I said, you have those within the quote unquote conscious community who are African centered and whatnot, but then you got a lot of those who claim to be conscious, but they just have a pseudo intellectual lifestyle, and that's not something you can pass on to your children. You're not talking about things. If you're not talking about economics, you're not serious. And a lot of people in the so-called conscious community, they don't even know who Dr. Paul Anderson is, but they'll talk to you about ancient Egypt and magic powers and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? That's a big thing. So I think we need a clear definition of conscious is the first thing.
I think that is a problem. Consciousness is very relative. You have people who think they're conscious because they're vegetarian or vegan. You have people who are conscious because they've studied Tantra or crystals or yoga or something like that. So I think, and that's what I think that War on the Horizon actually has been trying to do or has done, is create a different kind of subcategory with more definitive more definitive ways of thinking and ways of actions that you would have to partake to be part of that. Do you consider yourself part of the African-centered community, or not really?
If you could, that's what you call it. Yeah, I mean, I consider myself to be Black first. I'm a Pan-Africanist.
Okay.
But I don't see myself as a member of the quote-unquote conscious, because, like I said, that's a state of mind. It's not an actual physical realm, That's not something tangible. But I do think one issue that we have, besides just the fact that, passing on these values to the children, is there's not enough people who think like that. Like, for example, I live in the Atlanta area, and one challenge that a lot of me and my brothers have is we don't find a lot of women on our level as far as the way we think. Like, most of them, Black females, they're single mothers, or they got things on their heads or whatever. And I'm not here to say, like, women are the problem and men are angels or whatever. But what I am trying to say is when you have more women than men, but at the same time, most of the women, are bust downs, a lot of men get discouraged and they start looking towards mixing with, white women and whatever. that's a game over.
Not really. I don't agree with that if they are really men, because, and I'm not one to tell people about manhood, but when I look at men, my definition of manhood would include somebody who would see the problem and try to correct it and be part of the solution, and not become part of the problem. So to see a woman who definitely needs to learn about herself and learn how to be a contributing member to Black society, and instead of trying to help her with that. Now, there are extremes. I'm not saying go for the worst of the worst, but I think that it's all completely possible to find somebody who just needs a little bit of polishing and do that, versus going to the extreme of dating interracially or some other option like that. That seems pretty extreme.
So how do you feel about men who have no children if most of the Black women have children out of wedlock?
I think that that's a personal decision, but I would say that Black women face the same thing. Most Black men have children out of wedlock. They may not always claim them, but as a woman with no children, I think it would be very hard and almost unrealistic for me to expect to find a Black man my age with no children whatsoever. I think that a lot of times we're too busy pointing the finger and looking at each other's faults instead of just trying to be the best that we can be. Because nobody's perfect and we've all made errors and we've all done things in our past. But that doesn't stop us from elevating today and becoming part of the solution.
Okay. Well,
I have a question. You mentioned Atlanta. Are you in Atlanta?
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh, yes. So we're both unfortunately in Atlanta.
Say it again?
I said we're both unfortunately in Atlanta. I'm not taking this personally. I will say you made a lot of generalizations. I wear African attire too, but I don't think I fall into the category of people you're talking about. And
I don't think you do.
Yeah, I'm not taking that personally from you because I'll say a significant number of the people I've met here in Atlanta who do look like that are not what we would consider to be conscious. That understanding is really what led me to write the book Center, because we need to distinguish between that quote-unquote community, and community is the wrong word really, because I was checked on that one time. That group of individuals who call themselves conscious, the vast majority of them have a lot of insanities, a lot of Eurocentric ideas, a lot of flower stuff, a lot of extreme individualism. I see a lot of that, and I would say that's a majority here. And I'm assuming elsewhere based upon what people have told me. So what we need to do, though, because there are some of us, like yourself, who understand, who are clear, we have to find our way to those others who, if you will, are like us, and start building. That's why I don't say really that I'm part of the conscious community. I say I'm part of the center community, and that's the center of this wide hodgepodge, this motley crew of individuals who call themselves conscious. But at the center of this, and in a way they protect us, because folks who may try to get to us, they get lost in dealing with folks who aren't really there. But we have to find those people to build this center so that the children in the center will be safe, so that they will be sacred. I imagine you would be good for the families, the children, the sisters, the brothers who are in the center, because we're trying to build something. What happens, though, and I've seen this in other places also, we don't broadcast who we are. We don't broadcast who we're about. Number one, because we will attract the wrong things, and number two, it's going to create a lot of chaos within us, because we're not proselytizers, and we get isolated and put to the side because we check or we question most of the behavior of people who are claiming to be conscious. So I would agree, but I don't. Obviously, you haven't given up or quit anything like that, or you wouldn't be on here. But search for those individuals who are about the business of being righteous as African, and a lot of them don't wear African attire. Like you said, a lot of them do not wear African attire.
Like I said, a lot of my friends have African attire. It's not the attire that I have an issue with. It's like I said, the psychology psychology. A lot of the people who have psychology, like I said, they look Afrocentric on the outside. When we start talking to them, a lot of times they're empty on the inside, or they're worse, they're Eurocentric.
Absolutely. And that's we're talking about the children here. Really, that's what the children see. They see the contradiction, and so they say, well, why should we follow you? You're worse than those Negroes who you talk about.
They're even worse.
Yeah, at least they know who they are, and they're not faking it.
Yep.
So I mean, we're not on disagreement on that, but I will say this, and I don't know who you are, but we need you. We need warriors like you who are clear on this contradiction, who are clear that there's so much fake stuff going on that it's not funny, and that we have to build something that's not fake.
Well, I mean, all I can do is try my best to organize the brothers, but like I said, one glaring thing that I see for us is that, a lot of them, they're not encouraged by the lack of, black women, because, like I said, a lot of the women that we see, usually they're single mothers, or they go, they're thug chasers. And some of the brothers like, what's the point? And I see the danger in that.
Well, that's interesting, because I have run into and know quite a few sisters who have a similar comment about the brothers. This is something that we have tried to work on. My suggestion there, and there's evidence within the last 5 years, multiple pieces of evidence that it works. Connect yourself with centered elders in the community. Connect yourself with centered elders in the community. In fact, Ina Yah's got 2 marriages in the last 2 years under her belt in terms of connecting people. I say do your work, and you will find the person who you need, because that person should also be doing the same work. But connect yourself with elders. Elders should know. If you're just out looking, and I'm not saying that that's futile, but if you're just out looking, then you're probably going to run into more sisters who don't get it, who are faking it, than those who do, because they're going to be looking for power, and they see powerful warrior, and their whole idea is, okay, well, I can get this individual, and then I'll just change their politics as, we get to know each other better, get married, and all the rest of it, have children. The same thing works in the other direction. Mm-hmm. But if you're with, and this is one of our traditions, it's one of the traditions I think that really needs to be brought back in a big way. When elders picked people to be together, it was because they knew their weaknesses and their strengths, and they knew what to match up, and they knew what they were good at and what they weren't good at. I think the elders are really good at doing that, and elders in training, are really good at doing that. So the brothers who are serious, who I offer a challenge. Okay, the brothers who are serious, who are looking for serious worker sisters, serious sisters to build, serious sisters to create complements out of, who come with an idea of commitment, not the idea of play or dating or anything like that, but their intent is commitment, then run them by us, or run them by any number of other good elders who names I don't want to give online, but I will be glad to relay, because everybody is not for us. We're not for everybody. So we'll find a way, because we're trying to build families. We're trying to build complements. As I say, not trying to be funny. We'll find somebody for you who fits your mind.
All right, caller, did you have anything else before we move on to our last caller of the evening? Caller, are you still there? All right, I guess maybe he dropped the line, but thank you for calling in, and be sure to call back. Let's see here. All right, so we're getting close to the 9 o'clock hour. We'll take one last call before the program ends. 7645, you're live.
Hi, my name is Francis Molly, and I was listening to the show. I want to know why parents shouldn't be friends with their children.
Why parents shouldn't what?
Why shouldn't be friends with their children?
Well, I don't. Okay. If that's difficult to explain to someone who is young, we didn't mean don't be friends in the sense of I don't take care of you and I can't sit down and talk to you and you can't talk to me about stuff and we can't go to the playground or to the amusement park or travel together and have conversations. The problem comes when the parent is thinking like a child and the parent loses the ability to make decisions for the child that an adult should make for the child, because children are not mature enough to make some decisions in this world. That's why we have to grow up in homes and be raised in families, which teaches us how to act right, make good decisions, and all the rest of that stuff. That's what parents are for. They're supposed to be the ones that make the decisions that help this child grow up to be a good adult. But that parent has to be an adult most of the time in order to make those decisions. And when they are acting like they're that child's friend all the time, they can make decisions that can hurt that child because they're thinking like the child instead of like the adult who's trying to help the child.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling in. Gotta love that. Brother DJ, did you have any comments that you wanted to add?
No, I think, Baba Baruti hit it square on the head. I mean, that's just it. Parents allowing themselves to be on their child's level. That should never happen because it blurs the line when it comes to correction. So I agree with Baba 100%.
Definitely.
Beautiful to hear that little girl's voice on the line.
Yes, it is.
I think she is the youngest War on the Horizon caller ever. I think she made a new record.
Wow.
And just as cute as she wants to be. All right. We had one other caller who just came on the line. I'm not sure if Brother DJ, Baba Baruti, if you have time to take one more caller or if you wanted to end the program now.
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I'm willing.
Yeah, I'm good.
You have time? All right. 6260, you're live on War on the Horizon.
Yeah, how's everybody doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. I'm an elder. I'm 63 years old. I have a daughter. She's 33. But as a parent, you don't quit parenting just because the child becomes an adult. My daughter, she's getting ready to get married, and, her boyfriend, her fiance was going to buy her some diamonds. I told her why I was against diamonds symbolically. I gave her a traditional first name and last name, and I said I hope that she doesn't, allow their offspring to have a European name. So my whole point is this, a lot of times we think that our parenting basically ceased, or the instructional aspect of parenting ceases once our children become adults or even mature. But that's still a responsibility of adulthood. Like I said, I'm 63, and my mother still informs me authoritatively, and I just wanted to make sure your audience have the realization that there's no, boundaries to being a parent, and that's really all I had to say.
I love that comment. Thank you for calling in.
I wanted to say Enia in the house because she says that constantly. And when he when he was saying that, it's at first you might think, okay, well they're grown, they're out the house. But no, like he said, you never stop. There are always things that have to be refreshed, always new stuff to talk about. So I agree with him 190%.
And Brother DJ, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point. Just because your children may be adults themselves, it doesn't mean that, you stop parenting. You just learn to parent a different way. So I agree.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for calling in with that valuable input. All right. Well, we are winding down another one of the War on the Horizon roundtables. I can say that I've definitely had fun and learned a lot. The callers today were excellent, so I thank everybody for calling in. Brother DJ, Baba Baruti, did you have any comments that you wanted to end the night on? Any last words?
I enjoyed this immensely. I was thinking earlier today about preparing for the class, and I'd written some notes on previous days, but I came rushing home from errands and said, okay, I need to prepare for this class, and then I stopped and I said, I've been preparing for this for like the last 20 years. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's talking to family, being in the presence of good people, people who understand and who know. So I'm glad I was invited to be here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would just say, Madasi to you, Sister Shabazz, and Madasi to Baba Baruti for this conversation is definitely needed. I certainly learned a lot, and Khadijah has been listening in, so we'll continue. Her and I will continue this conversation after this particular program ends, and I'll see you tomorrow, Bob.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. Greetings to Sister Khadijah from both of us. And Sister Shabazz,
yes,
take
sir.
care of yourself.
Thank you.
We will see. And best of luck on getting that book out.
Thank you. You know what? It doesn't matter if I sell any more copies, because when I heard you had purchased my book, I said, can't nobody tell me nothing for the next month, so it don't even matter at this point.
Right. I appreciate that. Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
A BB for Hodier, family.
A BB for Hodier.
BB for Hodier.
All right. So as we said, that ends another broadcast. I do just want to go over the lineup for the rest of the week. I forgot to mention that Sister Yaya should be back tomorrow from 7 to 9. I'm not sure what her topic is, but it's always a good one. Monday will be Irritated Genie going over African-centered religions. Tuesday, I am on vacation, but DJ will be there speaking about the Lil Wayne controversy. And then we'll finish up the week on Friday with Iniya talking about her reading list. So definitely tune in for the rest of the week to all the War on the Horizon programs. And hopefully this has been very enlightening, and we will all do our best to try to put a little bit more care and love and all of that into our children so that we don't have to deal with this problem as much. There's no guarantees, but if we all do the best that we possibly can to keep these Europeans out of our children's minds, our future will be much, much brighter. So I will see you guys tomorrow on Sister Yaya's program. Peace.
St. for kids. Liberation schools. Yeah. Teach the babies. Let's ride. Peace to the seeds, the cream of the crop. I'm here to give you truth so you rise to the top. Our enemies try to fill your mind up with lies, but I'm here to protect you, make sure you survive. Open up your first eye, don't fall for the traps. Say no to drugs and be proud to be black. Black is the essence, the elders gave the lessons. You the future warriors, here to resurrect this. Here's a gift that I'm willing to share. It's quite rare, and it took a little time to prepare. Every letter and every word is truly sincere. African youth, you're the best, others can hardly compare. Love the melanin in your skin unconditionally. Despite the misery connected to its history, technology has our people treating it foolishly. Before slavery, our roots were surrounded by royalty. Every generation is supposed to get better than the latter, but we separated from our ancestors. Let's bridge the gap, become whole again, live from the soul again, learn to grow again. I remember when I was younger, I sit on my daddy's shoulder, wishing I was older. Now I'm a grown up, but I don't know much. It's time for Sankofa. It's time for Sankofa. We build our own schools for our children's needs. The enemy's schools breeds fools and fiends. By all means, we convene to put them on the path of power and high esteem. If you don't know where you come from, why you standing where you standing, where you going, can you answer? We were masters before master. We have gathered together to get it together. From now and forever after, never sever. Our bond will never shatter ever. Boys and girls, the world is yours. You have options. See that the choice is yours. Win or lose, the elders will help you. An individual without a village is just an empty vessel. Raise the babies, frequencies, love, respect, and dignity. Decency can be cool too. School the youth, equip them with the tools to live. Left foot nature, you're righteous people. Don't be afraid to be you. Fear is in the mind. Reality is you will align with the divine shine. On the ancestors for guidance, applying God energy, building manifest through high science. Coming in from the cold, embracing the sun on our own. Now we know what we know. We wanna let go. Let the seeds grow, let the trees grow. Cause you never know what fruit they may bear. What fruit they may bear.